Hey everyone, Elizabeth here. The Last Laugh delivers stories that leave you speechless. If you're here for it, hit subscribe and let's go.
The group chat was called Holloway Christmas 2024. I noticed the silence first. My sister Renee had been posting daily countdown timers, recipe polls, a debate about whether Dad's sweet potato pie should have marshmallows this year. Then around the second week of December it just stopped. No new messages. No reactions to my last comment about bringing sparkling cider. Nothing. I told myself they were busy. Renee was planning her wedding. Mom was probably overwhelmed. Dad had been recovering from a knee replacement in October and hated typing on his phone at the best of times. Then Renee texted me directly. Not in the group. Directly. Hey, so, Mom removed you from the chat. Derek's parents are doing Christmas with us this year and she didn't want things to be uncomfortable. You know how it is. Please don't make this a whole thing. I read it 3 times. Each time the words rearranged themselves and still said the same thing. Derek was Renee's fiancé. We had met exactly twice. Once at a family dinner in September where he spent most of the evening asking me polite, careful questions about what I did for work. And once at a birthday party for my nephew where he stood near the drinks table and scrolled his phone. He had never been rude to me directly. He was simply the kind of man who sorted people into categories quickly and quietly, and whatever category he had assigned me to, it apparently came with a footnote. Not suitable for Christmas. Dad sent a separate message 40 minutes later. Don't take it personally, Nadia. It's just this year. Next year will be different. I set my phone face down on my desk. Next to it sat a draft agenda for the Illinois Governor's annual infrastructure gala, scheduled for Christmas Eve. My name appeared on page 2 under the heading Special Recognition. The governor's chief of staff had called me the week before to confirm I would be in attendance and to ask about my dietary preferences for the seated dinner. We'd spoken for 11 minutes. I'd thanked her, confirmed salmon, and gone back to reviewing the $47 million contract renewal my firm had just secured with the state's Department of Transportation. I did not tell my family any of this. I hadn't told them much of anything about my professional life in years. Not because I was ashamed of it, but because I had learned, slowly and at considerable cost, that sharing my successes with certain people does not produce pride. It produces recalibration. A shifting of goalposts. A new reason why what I have accomplished is not quite enough or not quite real or was somehow handed to me. So I kept it separate. My work life lived in one world. My family lived in another. For a long time that arrangement had felt like protection. I didn't respond to Renee. I didn't respond to my father. I put my phone in my bag, picked up the gala agenda, and walked to the window of my 12th floor office in the Meridian building on South Wacker Drive. Chicago in December was doing what it always did, gray sky, lake wind, the city moving fast and indifferent below. I watched a delivery truck navigate around a double-parked sedan and thought, I have work to do. That was the last time I thought about Christmas for 11 days. My name is Nadia Holloway Marsh. I am 39 years old. I run a civil infrastructure consulting firm called Crestline Group, which I founded 8 years ago with $80,000 in personal savings, a sublet office in Pilsen, and a former colleague named Jerome Watkins who believed, perhaps more than I did at the time, that we could compete with firms that had been operating for 30 years. We were wrong about the timeline. It took longer than we thought, cost more than we planned, and came close to breaking both of us in year 3 when a city contract we had been promised quietly went to a firm with better political relationships. Jerome and I sat in that Pilsen office at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night with our financials spread across a folding table and had the most honest conversation I have ever had with another professional human being. We decided to stay. We decided to get better at the political part. We decided that what we were building was worth the cost. By year 5, Crestline had a staff of 22 and a growing portfolio of state and municipal contracts across Illinois and Indiana. By year 7, we had been featured in Crain's Chicago Business and shortlisted for the Chicago Innovation Awards. Last spring we crossed $200 million in total contracted value, a number that still occasionally stops me mid-sentence when I say it out loud. Jerome and I don't work out of Pilsen anymore. But I kept the folding table. It's in my current office against the wall holding a plant and a framed photo of Jerome and me on the day we signed our first state contract. We are both wearing slightly too large suits and expressions of barely controlled terror. I love that photo more than almost anything in my office. The governor, Governor Sandra Okafor, first black woman elected to the position in Illinois history. A woman I had admired from a careful professional distance for 4 years before she invited me to join her Infrastructure Advisory Council 18 months ago, had become something I would cautiously describe as a mentor. We had dinner 3 or 4 times a year. He called me Nadia. I called her Governor, which she had once laughed at and told me to stop doing, and which I continued doing because some habits are how you show respect. She had told me in November that she wanted to recognize Crestline at the Christmas Eve gala. "You've been doing the work quietly for too long," she said. "Let me make some noise about it." I had said thank you. I had meant it. My family did not know about Sandra Okafor. They did not know about the $47 million contract or Crane's Chicago business, or the Innovation Award shortlist, or the folding table in Pilsen that I had carried with me like a talisman through 8 years of building something real. What they knew was this: I was a consultant. I worked for the city, sort of. I traveled a lot for work. I was divorced. My marriage to Marcus Marsh had ended 4 years ago, quietly and without drama, a mutual acknowledgement that we had grown into different people who wanted different things. We were still friendly. He had remarried last year, a woman named Priya who I had met once and found genuinely lovely. My family's understanding of my divorce was that I had failed at marriage and had been too focused on work to keep a man. My mother had said something close to this directly once, and then softened it with a comment about how I was still young enough to try again. I was 35 at the time. What they knew about Derek's family was apparently enough to conclude that I was the variable most likely to create discomfort. And what was funny, in the way things are funny when they are also painful, was that I understood the logic. To my family I presented as unmarried, mid-level government-adjacent worker, slightly intense, brings sparkling cider instead of wine, doesn't talk much about herself. Derek's parents were, Renee had mentioned in passing, from the North Shore. His father was a cardiologist. His mother sat on several nonprofit boards. In my family's calculus, I was the one who would lower the room. I thought about this on the morning of December 22nd while I was being fitted for the navy blazer I would wear to the gala. My tailor, a meticulous Eritrean woman named Miriam who had been making my professional wardrobe for 6 years, was pinning the lapel and telling me about her grandchildren's Christmas pageant when I realized I was smiling, not because of anything she had said, but because I was thinking about Derek's mother sitting on nonprofit boards, and about Governor Sandra Okafor, and about the fact that those two things existed in the same universe and my family had placed me firmly in the wrong one. "You're in a good mood," Miriam observed. "Working on it," I said. Christmas Eve fell on a Tuesday. I know what my family did that morning because Renee posted to her personal Instagram, which I still followed and which she apparently had not considered in the exclusion logistics. There were photos of the kitchen. Cinnamon rolls rising on the counter, my mother's good china being hand-washed, a bouquet of red tulips in a mason jar on the dining table. There was a photo of my father asleep in his recliner with a Christmas movie playing behind him, his reading glasses still on his face. There was a photo of the tree, which was enormous this year. They must have gotten a new one, strung with the multicolored lights my mother had used since I was 7 years old. There was no photo of me, obviously. I was not there. I looked at these photos for approximately 30 seconds in the back of a town car on my way to the University of Illinois at Chicago Forum, where the governor's gala was being held. Then I put my phone away and reviewed my remarks. I had been asked to say a few words after the recognition. Brief, the chief of staff had said, maybe 3 minutes. And I had written something that I'd revised 4 times and still wasn't fully happy with. The problem was I kept trying to make it sound humble and it kept coming out either falsely modest or accidentally arrogant. I'd finally settled on honest, which is harder than it sounds. Jerome met me at the venue entrance. He was wearing a tuxedo and an expression of barely suppressed excitement that he was attempting to disguise as professionalism, with limited success. "You look incredible," he said. "You look like you're about to propose to someone," I said. "I might. The evening is young." He handed me a glass of sparkling water. "Ready?" "No," I said. "Let's go." The forum was extraordinary. UIC had transformed the main event space with warm lighting and round tables draped in white linen, and there were somewhere around 800 people in the room. City officials, state legislators, infrastructure executives, nonprofit leaders, journalists, contractors, architects, a table of people from the Army Corps of Engineers. I had attended many events like this over the years, but I had never attended one where I was being recognized, and the difference in feeling was significant in a way I had not anticipated. I kept wanting to stand slightly off to the side the way I always did at these things and kept catching myself and straightening up. I was seated at the head table 2 chairs from the governor. The cardiologist's wife, I imagined, had not sat near a governor lately. I kept that thought private and hated myself slightly for having it. Governor Okafor arrived at 7:15, moving through the room the way she always moved, purposefully, warmly, stopping to speak to specific people in a way that never felt performed. She found me at the table and put a hand briefly on my shoulder. "Nervous," she said. "A little," I admitted. "Don't be. I'm going to say things about you that are all completely true, which is rarer than it sounds at these events." She smiled. "How's the salmon?" "Haven't eaten yet." "Eat. You'll need your strength for the photographs afterward." She moved on down the table. Jerome leaned over from my left. "Did the governor just joke with you about salmon?" "She did." "I love her," he said. The recognition came at 8:45 after dinner and before the dancing. The governor stood at the podium and spoke for about 7 minutes about infrastructure investment in Illinois, about the gap between political intention and actual implementation, about the firms and individuals who did the unglamorous work of turning policy into roads and bridges and water systems that functioned. Then she spoke about Crestline. She named specific projects. She named the Calumet Corridor redesign, which had cut commute times for 40,000 daily travelers. She named the South Side Water Main Replacement Initiative, which had been completed 14 months ahead of schedule. She cited the $200 million figure and paused after she said it, in the way people pause when they want a number to land. Then she said my name. Nadia Holloway Marsh founded Crestline Group 8 years ago with a vision, a folding table, and the kind of stubbornness that I find, in my experience, to be the only reliable predictor of whether someone will still be standing when the work gets hard. Tonight, on behalf of the state of Illinois, I am proud to name her our Infrastructure Innovator of the Year. The room stood. 800 people and most of them stood. I walked to the podium. I shook the governor's hand. I took the award, a heavy glass sculpture etched with the state seal, and I looked out at the room and found Jerome's face in the crowd, and he was crying, which made me almost cry, and I had specifically planned not to cry, so I looked at the back wall and waited until my throat cleared. Then I gave my 3 minutes. I talked about Jerome. I talked about the team at Crestline, about the people who had stayed through year 3 when it was hard. I said that the only thing I knew for certain about building something was that you had to be willing to look foolish for longer than feels reasonable, and that the people who were still with you at the end of that period were the ones who mattered. I said thank you to the governor, and I meant it the way you mean things when you are genuinely grateful and genuinely surprised to be standing where you are standing. The room applauded again. I walked back to my seat. Governor Okafor touched my arm. Jerome hugged me so hard my glass sculpture briefly tilted at a dangerous angle. 8 years, he said. 8 years, I said. I did not know while any of this was happening that my mother's phone had rung at 7:52. Renee told me later. She said they were midway through trimming the tree. Derek's parents had arrived. His father tall and silver-haired, his mother in a cashmere cardigan, both of them the specific kind of pleasant that required maintenance. My mother had been managing the pleasantness carefully all evening, the way she managed everything she cared about. Precisely, quietly, with attention to every variable. Her phone rang. She glanced at it to silence it and then didn't silence it because the caller ID read, Governor's Office, State of Illinois. She answered because you answer that. The aide, a woman young, professional, brisk, said she was calling on behalf of Governor Okafor's office and needed to reach Nadia Holloway Marsh. Did my mother have a way to contact me? My mother said yes, of course. The aide said, the governor needs her at the gala this evening. Ms. Holloway Marsh is being named Illinois Infrastructure Innovator of the Year, and the governor wanted to make sure she had everything she needed for the. My mother said, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? The aide repeated it. She added that it was a significant recognition, that the event was being covered by 3 news outlets, and that my mother should be very proud. By this point, according to Renee, the tree trimming had stopped. Derek's father had set down an ornament. Derek's mother had put down her wine glass. Everyone was looking at my mother, who was standing in the middle of the living room holding her phone with both hands and had gone, as Renee put it, the color of the good china. Derek's father said, Is everything all right? My mother said, My daughter, and then stopped. Derek's mother said, Your daughter? My mother sat down on the couch. The cashmere cardigan woman from the North Shore whose husband was a cardiologist and who sat on non-profit boards sat next to her, because it seemed like the right thing to do, and said, "Tell me about your daughter." And my mother, Renee said, started talking. He talked for a long time. She talked about me in ways she had never talked about me to my face. About how I had always been the serious one, the driven one, the one she hadn't always known how to reach. She talked about the divorce and how she'd handled it wrong. She talked about the group chat and said mid-sentence that she didn't know why she'd done it, that she hadn't thought about it properly, that she'd been trying to manage things the way she always managed things and she'd managed this one badly. Derek's father, the cardiologist, said quietly to his son, "You should call her." Derek said he didn't have my number. Renee said she did. I was in the middle of a conversation with the director of the Illinois Department of Transportation and a city alderman I'd been trying to connect with for 6 months when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it. "Renee, can you call Mom when you get a chance? Like tonight if possible." "He's okay. Can you call her?" Then 30 seconds later, "Nadia, I'm sorry about the chat. I'm really sorry." I looked at those messages for a moment. Then I put my phone back in my pocket and returned to my conversation with the transportation director, because the alderman was in the middle of a sentence and it was a sentence I had been waiting to hear for 6 months and it deserved my full attention. I'm not going to pretend that I felt nothing reading those messages. I felt quite a lot. I felt the particular exhaustion of being someone your family underestimates and the specific loneliness of having kept your life so private that the people who should have known you best had to learn about you from a governor's aide on Christmas Eve. I felt something that was close to grief and close to vindication and tasted like neither one. But I also felt, and this part surprised me, protective. Not of myself. Of my mother standing in her living room with her good china and her multicolored lights, learning a version of her daughter she hadn't let herself see. I filed that feeling away for later. I called her at 11:15 from the car on the way home. Jerome had tried to get me to stay for the dancing, but I had said goodnight to the governor, accepted 17 business cards, allowed myself to be photographed with the glass sculpture 6 separate times, and decided I had done enough for one evening. My mother answered on the second ring. "Nadia," she said. Just my name. The way she said it when I was small and had done something that scared her. "Hi, Mom." Silence for a moment. I watched the highway. "The governor's office called," she said. "I know. She stopped. "You've been doing this for 8 years and you never told us." I thought about how to answer that. I thought about year 3 and the folding table and Jerome crying at the back table tonight. I thought about the September dinner where Derek had sorted me into a category. I thought about don't take it personally and we didn't want things to be awkward and all the ways love gets expressed as management. "I told you I was a consultant," I said. "I told you I ran my own firm. You didn't tell us what that meant." "No," I said. "I didn't." Another silence. The car moved through the dark city. Somewhere ahead of us I could see the lake, the black water and the distant lights of the South Shore. "Derek's mother asked me questions about you all night," my mother said. "She wants to have lunch with you. Her sister is on the Governor's Infrastructure Council." "I know. I've worked with her." My mother made a sound I couldn't interpret. Something between a laugh and something else. "Renee feels terrible," she said. "I know. Your father cried a little. Don't tell him I know that." "Nadia." Her voice changed. Got quieter. The managing things quality dropped away and what was underneath it was older and less certain. "I removed you from that chat because I was embarrassed. Not of you. I was embarrassed that I didn't know how to explain you to people. And I understand that that's not your problem to fix." I didn't say anything for a moment. "It's not," I said, gently. "But I appreciate you saying that. Will you come for Christmas?" "Not this year, it's too late for tonight, but tomorrow." "I have plans tomorrow," I said. Which was true. Jerome's family hosted a Christmas Day gathering every year, a large, loud, multicolored affair at his mother's house in Beverly that I had attended for the past 5 years and considered one of the better days of my calendar. But I could do the 27th. If that works. "It works," my mother said very quickly. "It works perfectly." I smiled at the window. "The 27th. Bring the award," she said. "Your father will want to see it." "I'll bring it." "The glass one?" "From the governor." "His mom." "The glass one from the governor." She laughed. A real laugh this time, slightly watery at the edges. I heard my father's voice in the background asking who she was talking to, and her saying Nadia, and him saying something I couldn't make out, but the tone of it was unmistakably soft. Here is what I want to tell you about the things that didn't resolve neatly because they didn't, and pretending otherwise would be a disservice. My relationship with my family did not transform on Christmas Eve. Families don't transform. They shift incrementally the way shorelines do. My mother still manages things sometimes in ways that exclude rather than include. My father still communicates in the indirect, abbreviated way of a man who finds emotion logistically inconvenient. Renee still defaults to what will keep the peace, which is not always the same as what is right. What changed is smaller and more durable than transformation. My mother knows now who I am professionally. She can't unknow it. She looked at a version of her daughter she had filed under unclear, possibly struggling, and found something different there, and the recalibration that followed was visible and genuine, and she did not try to manage it away. That matters. That counts. Derek, to his credit, called me 2 days after Christmas. He said he had looked up Crestline and read about the gala and felt he owed me an apology for the way he had categorized me at that September dinner. He said he was embarrassed. I told him I appreciated the call and that I hoped he and Renee were happy, which was true. He has since then greeted me warmly at family events and asked genuine questions about my work and listened to the answers. This is, I have decided, the best possible version of Derek, and I accept it. Jerome's mother made her jerk chicken on Christmas Day and told me I was too thin and gave me a container of rice to take home, and I sat at her kitchen table for 2 hours after dinner and felt for the first time in a while completely at ease. When I drove home, the glass award was on my passenger seat. I kept glancing at it at red lights. The state seal refracting the streetlights into pieces, scattering light across the ceiling of the car. 8 years. I thought about that folding table. I thought about the night Jerome and I decided to stay. I thought about 40,000 people driving a faster route because of work my firm had done, who would never know our names and didn't need to. I thought about my mother's voice when she said Nadia. The old sound of it, the one from before I became someone she didn't know how to explain. I thought, I am going to have to stop keeping things so separate. Not for them. For myself. Because the cost of that much compartmentalization is that you end up on Christmas Eve in a ballroom with 800 people giving you a standing ovation, and the people who made you cannot see it. And even if that is partly their fault and partly your protection and partly just the particular mathematics of that family in that decade, even accounting for all of that, something is lost. Something that was never as recoverable as you told yourself it was. I don't know what to do with that yet. I'm still working it out. The 27th came. I drove to my parents' house with the glass award wrapped in a sweater in my back seat, a bottle of good wine, and sparkling cider because I always bring sparkling cider, and I was not going to stop now. My father opened the door before I got to the porch. He had his reading glasses pushed up on his head and his slippers on, and he looked at me for a moment with an expression I could not fully read, and then he pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than our hugs usually lasted. Infrastructure Innovator of the Year, he said into my shoulder. Don't make it a thing, I said. Too late, he said. It's already a thing. Come inside, your mother made the sweet potato pie. With marshmallows? Obviously with marshmallows. I went inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and sweet potato and the particular warmth of a home that has had people in it for days. The multicolored lights on the tree were still on, blinking their slow, slightly irregular pattern that I had watched every Christmas since I was 7 years old. I set the wrapped award on the coffee table. My father sat across from me. My mother came in from the kitchen with a dish towel over her shoulder. Renee arrived 20 minutes later with Derek, who shook my hand and said congratulations with an eye contact that was the least managed thing he had ever directed at me. I unwrapped the award. My father picked it up, turned it in his hands, read the inscription, held it up so the light from the tree caught the etching, set it down carefully on the coffee table. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, 8 years. 8 years, I said. I wish I'd known, he said. I know, I said. We looked at each other across the coffee table with the glass sculpture between us, refracting the multicolored lights into small scattered pieces across the ceiling. Next year, he said. Next year, I said. I'll tell you more. It wasn't everything. It wasn't a resolution. It was a door left open and both of us standing on either side of it, deciding whether to walk through. That's usually how it goes with family. Not a moment. A decision made slowly, imperfectly, and usually too late and right on time.